Well, the purpose of this event was to look at the EU as a democracy promoter, but not at how successful the EU is, what the impact of the EU is, but first of all, what does the EU aim to achieve?
It is exactly the kind of model of democracy that we're trying to push forward and promote in this country. What are we really talking about? What are we trying to do when we talk about promoting democracy?
We are still discussing it here at the forum, but what is clear is that the EU does not have one model. The EU also did not manage to draft a European consensus on democracy.
Democracy is important for the EU. But the EU struggles with the fact that it has 27, in fact some would say, including the EU institutions themselves, 28 forms of democracy.
In fact, all of them, all the 27 member states are practicing liberal democracy in one form or another.
Which I think quite often actually morph into neoliberal forms of democracy promotion, where economic interest for economic liberty and particular kinds of legal structures, for example, where economic liberty is prioritized over other kinds of democratic values.
The main thing is that how we see democracy, not only about European value or liberal democracy, we see democracy as citizen control of public decision making.
Well, I agree with the idea that the EU promotes not a certain model, but certain principles which are universal really. Human rights, access to justice, ability of people to keep politicians accountable, possibility to choose leaders in free and fair elections. I think these are basic principles which everyone would agree to. So basically, we should talk about equal opportunities. It's not about equal living standards, but about equal opportunity. Everybody has to have the same opportunity to earn some money, to get access to some resources, and this is a problem.
Well, I think fundamental human rights are a major part of it. The EU is very strong on that, and I think that's the area where it feels most comfortable speaking internationally.
And we launched this idea of more for more and less for less. In other words, adapting our cooperation, our ideas of assistance, our assistance program to the reality on the ground of the democracy as it is moving on in these countries. As we move ahead, we find out that it's not an easy principle to set into motion.
Well, it's a curious way of going at things. I mean, I can understand the reasons for it, because in the era of cuts to public spending and so on, the key problem for democracy promoters today is how do you provide accountability for the money that is provided. So hence you only give for those people that already have democratic governance. But that's of course the paradox. How can you give more for those countries that are already more democratic and less for those that haven't got really the hope of moving somewhere?
But at the end of the day, if a government isn't allowing its citizens active participation in political processes, if there is widespread violation of human rights, if people in a given partner country of the EU feel simply that they do not have the same opportunities and chances to better their lives, and that their government is very much complicit in this poor state of their affairs, then it becomes strategically useful for the EU to use this kind of language.
Nowadays, the language is about deep democracy and more for more. Well, sorry, it's just a game of words. We understand it, but don't look for the depth of this concept. The Arab world, and Cairo in particular, doesn't like the conditionality. So I quite understand. We just give you more for more in exchange.
I think it's now a stage where we realise that local context is key, and ownership of political processes and change must come from within the country.
I noticed that the European Union tries, not always successfully, to sort of get the government to engage civil society, to engage with parliament, to engage with the opposition, there is no penalty. The resources are given and promises are made and the promises are broken.
Every country will craft its democracy model, as if in Europe. In Europe, you have 27 different democracies, and you have in Egypt a new different democracy. But the democracy, the main element is public control over decision making. So that's why our democracy will be our democracy.
After the Arab Spring, the message was clear that the EU had missed an opportunity to really have a partnership with societies. The EU certainly rhetorically is now at the point where it recognises the importance of civil society consultation.
I think, of course, that we must not, in spite of the complexity of the situation we face, we must not give up our own conception of democracy, and we must not give up our values. This is not what I'm talking about. These values must remain as the reference to which we can test our ability to move ahead and to convince our partners that there is a way through and a way forward. But at the same time, and that's my second point, we have to take into account the complexity of what we're facing. And we have to be much more in a listening mode, in a tolerant mode that sometimes we have been in the past.